Welcome to the Manaverse Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Traplin, and this is the podcast where we explore what it takes to build a successful, friendly local game store. If you like what you hear on today's episode, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on whatever fine platform you're listening on. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button. As always, you can find the notes and links mentioned in today's episode at manaversesaga.com. Today, we've got Michael McKinney on the podcast. Michael is the logistics manager of 95 MTG and 95 Game Center in Wilmington, and we're going to talk about some of the more interesting aspects of running a game store as somebody who's part of the team and not just the owner, and get a slightly different perspective than some of the past interviews that we've had on the podcast. So welcome to the podcast, Michael. I'm glad that you're here and that we can have this conversation.
Glad to be here.
Thank you very much for joining me today. Let's get started in the beginning. So let's go back in time. You said while we were getting ready for this and we were doing the prep that you've been in this industry for quite a long time, quite a while at this point. How did you get started in this business? Why did you get into this industry? Just tell the tale of 95 Game Center and your involvement in the operation.
Yeah, so just got back into Magic one day, played as a kid, came home from college one year and my brothers were playing, and now I had a job, I had money, a car to get to tournaments, and then I just wanted to play Magic for free, so I was bringing boxes out to college and running drafts, selling extra singles, and then one of my friends, like a guy I used to do business with, a good friend now for years, brought me on to Venda Grand Prix, started buying cards at Grand Prix for him, just getting more experience, moving up. Came to work for 95. We've been a Grand Prix vendor since about like 2012, 2013. Over the years, just the company grew, bigger office, and now we have an office that needed like a bigger office with a game store front. Figured why not open it. I've been in the doing the game stores as like a side hobby outside of Wilmington for a while, and just came on as the store manager as well now.
Interesting. So the business started off as, like, it sounds like a traveling vendor kind of situation where it was online sales plus also event sales. You didn't necessarily have this physical retail space to begin with.
Correct. It's mostly been, at shows, doing sales. What used to be, 30 Grand Prix a year, thing like that. So like every other weekend. And then between that, regular, like our own website, eBay, Amazon, TCG players, like online sales.
Interesting way to get things started. Normally there's a retail thing and then the business grows up from that kind of a starting point. It's a little bit reversed in that it's something that was online and more abstract because there was no physical location that people could come to.
Absolutely. Like so many vendors are like, they have a storefront, they're bringing singles back to their local communities or crowds, or they have the in-store needs. And we just kept getting so big and just needing bigger spaces that we're like, we might as well just open a store at this point.
That's an interesting jump. So I guess my first question would be, why not just keep growing the operation as more of like maybe get a warehouse? Like, why go into the retail realm,
I think part of it is just the local game stores in the area are not always viewed as the best, or there's just like, they don't have everything as far as community-wise. It's easier for us to offer a huge selection of Magic cards or singles because we do all the big shows. Obviously, post-COVID is when we opened, so there were less stores in most areas, but a lot of places closed. There's less shows, so it gives our staff something else to do, more hours, and keeps people employed, keeps people working. Gives back to the community a little bit more. We charge whatever TCG is minus the fees, so people get 15% discount just for being in store. And really just want to have a nice place for people to play, and less so about like making the storefront the business. We make our money doing the singles, doing the show, so we can provide just concentrate in a nice, clean, like gaming experience for people in the community.
Interesting. So the retail side of things is almost the service side of the business, and the actual core elements are, like you said, the shows and the traveling and the vending and that sort of thing. And
right.
That's interesting. It's a very different way of going about doing that. Can you describe the store a little bit? Like, so for people who've never been or have no idea what the experience is like, what is it like going into the game center?
For sure. We actually have a pretty large play space. Our storefront, I think, is like fire coded to fit like 150 players. Um, Unlike most game stores, we're not just a full retail space. We don't have anything like shelves going up and down the stores. We have a couple spinners of display product. We have a couple shelves of board games, things like that. So there's a selection for the community, but we're not trying to cram every bit of retail space in here. Like I said, we're really focused on having a nice play space. Tables are spaced out. No one's crushed on top of each other. Try to go for like nice tables, nice chairs. We have a little lounge area set up. Big screen TV, couches, things like that, just to let people relax between rounds. Parents can relax while their kids are playing Pokemon. Just well lit. We try to have a place that's like people want to be and don't mind being. Our storefront has a lot of like the window fronts versus like being a wall, so there's a lot of natural light coming in. We're not the closet in the back. We're not shoving guys somewhere on like a dirty table. Really, the focus is a bright, clean play space and less more being like a giant retail spot.
So, follow-up question to that would be, right now, or at least for the last couple of years, especially since COVID, there's been I would say, a trend towards moving away from the play space model, right? Game stores used to be synonymous with, well, you needed tables, you needed to have organized play, and you needed to have play spaces in order to sell those products. That was like
absolutely
part of the model, right? But that's kind of drifted back, right? COVID, in a sense, showed that people wanted the games and they wanted to be able to buy and they wanted to be able to support the stores, but they didn't necessarily need the play areas in order for that to happen. So there's a lot of game stores that have gone and really scaled back their play area to favor
absolutely
more retail focused things. So for those people who are like, that's an interesting like model because you're kind of going against the trend right now, or you're going against the common wisdom, what would you say to people who maybe are listening and thinking, that's a mistake, why not just jam all the retail in there?
There's perks on both sides. Like obviously, with less retail space, we have a smaller selection of things like board games. We don't carry miniatures. Something like 40K is a huge war game. Whether you're at home or in a store, like a 40K line is massive. So we don't really deal in miniatures. So we are limited on what we do offer. We are a huge Magic vendor. We have pretty much every Magic single. We try and have tons of Pokemon, things like that. Obviously, TCG games are much easier to stock in boxes and things like that than having shelves and pallets full of board games. So there is a downside to there. We lose some board game sales because we don't have the selection. But just I think this far outside of COVID or into COVID, I think a lot of players really do want to play space. We've had a couple board game groups find out we were here and used to play in other areas that deleted their game space or shrunk their game space, and now they all come out here. They all hang out together. So players are meeting new players and finding new groups. We have an EDH crowd that's wild. We'll have probably 20 to 30 people just for free Commander on Friday nights, and they just want to get out of the house. Like they might not even play with like new groups. They might just play with their friends or with their home group, but they just like being out of the house. They like being in the community and have that like higher energy and just, I think maybe a little sense of like normalcy as far as old Magic goes, like having 30 people, 40 people at an F&M. And just like being around other Magic players, I think is like a nice bonus. But like I said, there's definitely like ups and downs to reducing the retail space and like carrying less stuff and having that focus on play space. It doesn't generate revenue most of the hours of the day. But I think, like I said, we're really about like a community and have a nice play space and just getting people here to just hang out and play cards.
Yeah, that is the general argument, is that like every square footage of your space needs to generate some sort of a revenue and generally play space. That's a very hard way to tie into revenue generating activity. Like unless you're running an event and you're actually doing ticket sales or something like that, it's hard to really tie that to increased sales of your stock.
Of course.
At least that's the challenge. That's the assumption. And then that seemed to be maybe proven wrong. So, I have two questions. Do you do the pay to play model, or can people just come in and hang out?
So it's free table space. You don't have to pay to play. There's no table rentals or anything like that. We have D&D groups that come in. The old adage for like LGS is like, oh, they're going to buy, like people buy snacks and things like that. And they do. We still carry dice for everybody, carry books for everybody. The big part really is the Magic singles inventory we have. because we're such a big online vendor and because we have the opportunity to do all these conventions and shows to bring all that stock in, we sell just loads of Magic singles in store pretty much every day of the week because we have that established, Commander crowd. Even it's free to play. We don't charge entry for it. We do have paid tournaments, drafts, RCQs, modern events, things like that. Our big focus is still, even they're paying out 100% store, like in store credit, or paying out in pack, like a lot extra packs and things like that.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I'm sure there is like the mix of organized play and free to join kind of things. That was also part of the trend, is that if you do have a play space now, it's become more common to directly monetize it instead of saying, hey, anyone is welcome to come hang out and just spend all day sitting at the tables playing with their friends. Normally there's like an hourly fee or some sort of a membership or something along those lines to try and make that space pay for itself in a way that's easily tracked.
For sure. I actually know another LGS owner who has a place that's strictly pay to play, but the model works for him. I think you just have to offer the right things to make it an attractive place to still want to pay and play. If you don't have any, if there is no kind of snack bar, if there is no options of like maybe demo board games, or like if no one's coming out, it's not really an attractive thing. But if you have, hey, pay to play, like we have all this, like maybe demo board games, we have a big snack bar, we have a cafe built in, there's a reason to be there kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Or you have a good community, things like that. It really makes it worth it. I know some stores have, it's a pay to play, but they provide like a DM who writes all the campaigns and things like that. And as far as D&D players go, that's usually the hardest thing to find, is a DM. So having a professional who spends time making these campaigns for you is like a good experience. And I know a lot of players are happy to pay for that.
Definitely. It's a good way to add value to the service of providing the play space. Is also providing it's kind of like organized play, and it's just a different format. So the other follow-up question would be, have you noticed a correlation, in a sense, between having people in store and the sales generated, and then versus people like not being in the store and like sales falling because there's nothing going on? Like I'm guessing there is obviously a positive correlation. Otherwise, this experiment would probably not continue. But I think that is one of the biggest questions for people who are running game stores and hypothetically evaluating whether or not the play space is worth their time.
Oh, absolutely. Especially with the EDH crowd, new set comes out, new decks. If there's people in store playing, they're recommending cards to each other. They're testing decks. They're improving things. They're always shopping for that new single, the upgraded single, or they want to foil their deck out because it's their new favorite deck. It's doing well, kind of thing. Same with booster packs. People want to, one person's like, oh, I want to gamble, see if I get that new $100 card. It's like, oh, you didn't get it? Oh, I'm going to get it. And then, oh, you got it? Like, I want to try and get a better card than that. So there's people being in store definitely promotes a lot of, pack sales and single sales just for playing cards. Same with the board game groups, having them come in. They're like, they try out a game they like. They have the opportunity to play a demo game, or someone else owns a copy and they brought it in. So we get orders for board games or people picking up stuff like that. And same with D&D. People want the new books, or people want alt covers. People match, their character to their set of dice. You're playing a poison class. You want to have like some green, like poison looking dice, or you want to have some fiery looking dice. So players being in the store definitely helps promote sales, especially the ancillary stuff like accessories or just new singles, upgrade singles, things like that.
Yeah, and that's what I figured, but I wanted to make sure and confirm that for anyone who's wondering, it does still promote sales. It's still worth the effort. I guess it's more of a matter of how you go about doing it and the way that you structure it and the space that you are providing. I think the days of having a fold-up table and fold-up chairs and just having something, shoved to the corner are probably gone. I think if you want to have a play space that's going to generate revenue for your business, and it's going to be worth the time, and it's going to be worth the energy and all the labor that's involved in managing it, it's got to be done very well.
There's definitely advantages to having a permanent play space. Growing up, it was always fold-up tables in most places. And it's nice to like having a place that's like obviously dedicated to play space and not just gonna be covered up with comic book boxes and other ancillary stuff sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. So you've been doing this for a while. You've been involved in this business for a number of years at this point. What are some of the let's go with the negatives to start things off with, and then finish on the positives. So, what are some of the biggest mistakes, the biggest errors that you've seen made that, obviously they weren't fatal, but like, what are some of the things that you've run into that you've seen other store owners, maybe potentially running into in the future that you would recommend to avoid?
Boy, I think probably the biggest thing I've seen over the years is stores that like have price singles in the case because it's twofold. Where like sometimes your prices look like they're too expensive and people don't want the card because the card came down in price, or the inverse, you have a price card and it spikes and now you're selling a card for half of what it's worth, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of stores that I've dealt with over the last 10 plus years have like changed from that. Things like Star City, TCG Player, like it's so much easier to check live prices. Just a magazine every month anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's really the biggest thing that like kind of throws people off because they either feel like they're getting taken advantage of, or they feel like you're slow and you're being taken advantage of. They're like, oh, I got this store, they had this card for half price. They might keep coming back, but like they're only going to buy the stuff that's wrong.
Yeah, not the reputation you want as a business either.
Right.
So that leads to the question: how do you manage that sort of thing? And so instead of the case model and having your cards displayed face up on a piece of glass or something like that, how does it work at 95?
So actually, we don't have any singles out. We have a couple cases they're filled with old steel product, things like that. We have everything in the kiosk model because we're a big online business. We have just rows and rows of boxes filled with cards, alphabetized, condition, set, everything. So when you come to the store, we have 4 different kiosks you can grab a seat at. Search our entire live inventory. Everything's priced for condition, foil, full arts. It shows you everything we have in stock. Very easy to search. And you can pull up, all the variants, things like that. And then you basically build a cart right on the kiosk, and then we have a staff member pull the cards for you. You can check them over for condition. And then if you're happy with them, you just pay for them right then. No digging through boxes trying to find a bulk common. We have it all sorted out. Ups and downs, like it's hard. If you want to see a condition, the cards aren't right in front of you. We pull them out first, so it takes an extra minute. But outside of that, it's just everything is like I said, it's priced in store off. Like we lose our fees on TCG Player or eBay, so we take those fees out, and just in store customers are paying 10 to 15% less than they would online for a card,
which gives them a great incentive to come into the shop and do that in person. Not only do you get it
exactly
sooner, and immediately you get it slightly cheaper than you would otherwise.
Absolutely.
What platform do you use to provide this kind of a service?
So we actually have custom built software. Everything pretty much in house is coded by an in-house coder. Our cash register, our pricing software, our listing software, our kiosk, everything is done in-house, all custom. So it all works together. There are some great programs out there. Square is a good register program. TCG Player has its own kiosk system, but ours basically none of that works together. So ours, everything is custom built, so it works together. Whether if you order cards on our website, if you order cards on eBay, if you order cards on TCG Player, order cards in store, it's all the same system. As far as how we pull the cards, how everything's sorted, and like just to provide like a good experience across the board. And just make it easy for our back-end staff to deal with all this stuff. We're not checking 4 different websites. It's all one good system. Same thing with the cash register. Easy to add cards to it because you didn't order on a TCG Player kiosk, and now I'm trying to check you out with the Square register. It's all just one system, so it's all easy to add, fix things, change things.
That's beautiful. I love that a lot. So that to me is fascinating. So what was the process for creating that? Because I'm sure there's probably people listening right now be like, that sounds fantastic, because that's a major headache for stores across the world, is having different systems trying to talk to each other and trying to make sure your inventory is all tracked and managed, and you're not like, you're not selling a card that you don't have in stock anymore, and like all of that stuff that's involved with that process.
For sure. I couldn't get into the details on the coding process, but I know there's a lot of trial and error. We do a lot of bug testing, and just before we open it up, just running the register, making sure the new custom built register, because we opened July of last year, so we've been in LGS for not that long, just making sure things worked and the orders were coming through and the payment going through on the register versus coming through on eBay or coming through on our website, would still pick it up. It'd still mark the cards as being sold. So just a lot of bug testing, figuring out what we want out of a system is great. Getting feedback from the community. We keep adding new features to our kiosk system. Players are like, hey, how can I search like this? I don't want to find just like these kind of cards. Is there a search feature for that? Is there a search feature for this? So it's just always under development, always adding new stuff. Feedback from the employees. What issues do they encounter? What would make their job easier? What issues they encounter? And the same with the community. We just make it vocal. We ask them hey, what do you think of this kiosk feature? We're like, what do you wish you could do with this? What do you want to see, from our system? And we've actually started working with another LGS in Pennsylvania who wants to use our kiosk system. So now we've been working on upgrades. What would another store want to see? What's different from that doesn't do online sales, that only does in-store? What features would they need? What features do they want to see? And working with them to get feedback as well. It's just always keep developing and not just settling.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are probably tons of people listening right now thinking this sounds fantastic. How do I go about doing this myself? So I'm really interested in just the process of things, because having a custom solution is not available for everybody, but it's ideal if you can manage it.
Absolutely.
So you're working with another store at the moment to kind of see what fits. Have you?
Right.
Has it been considered to kind of turn this into an additional service that you could hey, we sell we've got our own custom solution for this kind of thing? Because I'm sure there are people, there are store owners out there who would love to have something that's built for them. That's
the next thing. We've done a lot of business with the store because they don't do online sales. A lot of their excess inventory they sell to us because we burn through it online or in our store as well. So we're working with them, trying to figure out a model if it's what kind of services can offer, what the service is worth to different stores. Obviously want to test it because it hasn't been out of house before. We must make sure it works on the computers they're using, any hiccups that we have from running the service out of house in another store, and just making sure that it works properly. Making sure we can provide some tech support without being if we're not on location, kind of thing, to walk them through different processes, and just make sure things are streamlined for what they need. Based off what we need for our online business, just changing the appearance of the front ends. So rather than have our logos all over everything in their store, they have their store stuff and set up for their clientele. That's how they want to view products, kind of thing. So, but it's something we're absolutely looking to expand on in the future. And if it goes well with them, offer it to other stores.
That sounds really good. I look forward to hearing more about this, because that is like I said, it's a big problem, at least in the industry right now. There's a lot of different solutions and there's a lot of options for, e-commerce and that kind of thing. But the challenge is really making everything talk to each other correctly and managing all of the different systems. And if there was something that just simplified that and cut through everything, and it was also, available, because you're not the only game store to have created some sort of a custom solution, but not everyone is willing to share that and make that part of their business model. So if there is something like that in the works for the near future, that would be very exciting.
It's great software working with it for the last few years in the back end, especially having tried other products just either listing on TCG Player with the quick list software, or so many times Crystal Commerce goes down and now you can't do anything. Mm-hmm. It's nice having something in-house where we control, we can restart the server ourselves, or we can fix this patch or bug ourselves. It's been a huge lifestyle improvement for doing a lot of online sales, even in the in-store stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure. All right. So we did a little bit of an exploration of some of the errors, some of the mistakes, some of the things to avoid. What are some of the things that you've discovered have been major successes that you'd say this is something that game store owners should be thinking about as important, pretty much across the board? What's something that you feel like this was a big win? People should be looking towards this.
Boy, I think everything has its ups and downs. I really think the biggest thing is just listen to your community and what they want, and feed that part of your community, but also not being afraid to try new things. So many stores I've worked with, and so many times, even in here, bringing in a new line of a toy or bringing in something different, and just checking it out and not being afraid to try the new stuff, try the new card games. When Flesh and Blood was new or Dragon Ball Super was new, taking a chance on those things can have huge payoffs, especially if you're the only store in the community that offers something like that. There's game stores these days are so similar, like having that new thing or having something slightly different can just be a huge boon, because then you get known for that. So then you get that whole community for it. I really think a lot of stores are either like too afraid to take a chance on some things, or too afraid to like wait on things and like make their margins the other big thing. Some stuff just sells slower, and if you discount it, it's not going to sell faster. You just have to wait it out, make your margins on other products, and yeah, I guess being patient and also like trying new things are like the huge big things that I think a lot of stores don't do.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that you mentioned that specifically, because I had just had an interview with David Finn from Bridge Distribution, but he had a great point. He literally just talked to him a couple of days ago, and his point was essentially the same thing. It was this idea of like game stores are, they're in this niche, right? They're already kind of like outside of the mainstream. Not a lot of people necessarily know what Euro games are, right? Like their exposure may not be the same. So we're already kind of like niched out. But even within that niche, there's still a lot of similarity between game stores, right? Everyone carries Magic to some extent. Everybody does Dungeons & Dragons. They all kind of like know what that's about. But there's room to actually even niche down further, to be something that people cannot find at every game store. And like you said, like the idea of trying out games that not everyone can buy everywhere, right? If your stuff
Right.
could be purchased at Target or Amazon or Walmart and like the big box stores, there's a good chance that you're going to have a tougher time selling those things, right? Because people it's got a more broad market or broad appeal now, more availability, and that means that there is more opportunity in trying out some of the smaller game lines or trying out some of the more obscure titles and stuff like that, and being known as a place that carries things that just can't be found elsewhere. And that used to be the way game stores were, because up until relatively recently, you couldn't find a lot of these products in the big box stores. You were the specialty retailer. You're almost being pushed even further down the line to be like, you have to be even more specialty if you really want to have that appeal that really draws people in.
For sure, every Target and every GameStop has Funko Pops now. GameStops carry anime action figures. They carry statues now. Like all the niche anime collectible things like that stuff is just it's very mainstream, which is not bad. It just makes it so someone will come in your store and see it and be like, oh, I bought that at Target last week already, kind of thing. We don't carry Monopoly as a board game. We don't carry Uno. We carry, Catan has a lot of crossover. You'll see Catan at Target, but like we also have like the Dark Souls board game. You're not going to find that at Target. You're not going to find that you might find it at GameStop, but we carry a lot more of the more niche, the more off-brand stuff like that. We carry, but then we also still carry staples. We have a huge line of Pokemon plushies. Where when you go to Walmart, there might be 2 to 3 different Pokemon to pick from, where we have 140 different ones in different sizes. Even when you're competing with like a mainline thing like that, having the variety and having the different things is going to make you the first stop because you have the options.
Exactly. Yeah. And Gigabytes Cafe, I remembered his name, the game store, great game store. I apologize to David if he's listening to this. Afterwards, I didn't mean to blank on your name, but no, I got it. Put it in there. But yeah, there is a large amount of value in being the place that you can find things that can't be found elsewhere. And the idea of being more willing, or maybe being more aware of the requirement to even diversify further, I think is an interesting point that a lot of store owners should be considering. February 2023, as we record this podcast, going forward, that's going to be even more important because the main core elements of the hobby industry have become more mainstream, for good and worse.
Definitely nice seeing like the hobby be more mainstream, but it definitely has taken a damper. Like the specialty, I like the specialty game stores.
Yeah, we need to step out of the comfort zone of where things have been in the past, and again, explore new areas. And I think that's something that generally businesses should be doing as often as possible, right? You gotta continually innovate. And I think game stores have I don't want to be mean and say stagnated, but the model hasn't changed all that much up until like COVID kind of forced everything to change. And I think we're continuing to see the evolution of what people want and what customers care about, and it's being further and further refined as the like again those core products kind of get adopted by bigger businesses that can compete on price that we just don't want to. Last couple of questions that I do want to explore are having to do with success and ultimately like really finding, what you're trying to achieve with a business and what you're trying to achieve with a game store. The theme of the podcast and what we're all trying to do is basically be successful in life. But that means a whole lot of different things to a whole lot of different people, right? So I'm going to guess that your answers are going to be a little bit different than, say, like the owner of the business, and their answer is going to be a little bit different. But from your perspective and your position with 95 Game Center, what do you feel like makes the store successful, and what do you feel is like a success for you personally in the context of what you do for the business?
For as far as like the business goes, I think because we were established as like an online vendor and have that big card inventory, I think it's really helped drive success of the store. Players come in, they can find pretty much any card they want any day of the week. We're very rarely ever either out of something or like can't get it for a player if they ask for it. I think that's really helped with the EDH community. They love being here because they can get all the niche things, all the small cards, like all the off-brand EDH staples, as well as like the modern crowd can come in and get tournament staples they need. And then having those players come out, having successful events is the big thing. That's really how I view it for myself, is like when we have a big successful event, when we have 40, 50 people in the store playing a tournament, we get that turnout, people are coming from an hour and a half away to come here to play. That's kind of like where I feel successful. Like I was able to schedule a good event. I was able to promote a good event. We were hosting a successful tournament. Because our main focus isn't being a retail space, it's being that play space. And I just love having people come in here like, wow, you guys have a nice place. It's clean. It's spacious. Like we're not on top of each other. Everything looks good. Like that's just where I drive my success from, is just knowing that like the events were successful. And whether it's an 8-person draft or a 50-person event, like I just like having like the players come out and have a good time because they drive the store. Like players are our customers. Without them, like we can't be successful. So
yeah. So I guess given the context of play space versus retail, the criteria for a win is different, right? It's not necessarily like, oh, I want to sell X number of dollars or X number of dollars worth of product. It's having people in the store and having them have a good time and enjoy themselves and have a great experience. That the knock-on effect will be increased business afterwards, but that in itself is the primary goal.
For sure. Like if we might have a great sales day. It's if people aren't playing here, I have less time to talk to them and interact with them. I have less time to figure out what they want, as far as like, what do we need to bring in? What do we need to order kind of thing? So just having players in the store, like for longer playing games, like I get to build that relationship where like I can find out what the community wants to see. We just had the new Phyrexia All-We-One set release. Mm-hmm. Made sure we had enough product. People want to buy things. Like, what do people want to buy from us? Knowing we have a big commander crowd, I had to buy more commander decks. So we had enough for the players of stock, where if you don't know your community, you might under order or something and get stuck with a bunch of product. And like I said, you might not have enough to sell to your community and they go somewhere else to buy it. Mm-hmm. Or the inverse, like you might over order and now you're stuck with a bunch of dead product kind of thing. So for me, the play space and just being able to interact and like figure out what the community wants makes my job as far as ordering things and just running the store successfully a lot easier.
I think it's a really good point to emphasize too, is that the more that you understand what your community wants, the more accurate you can tailor your business and what you carry to deal with that supply and demand, right?
Right.
And over ordering or under ordering, like both of those are problems. And you want to do that as optimally as you can. And the way that you do that is to have that information. And the way you get the information is to be tightly tapped into what your community wants. So I think that's an interesting point to like say, hey, there's a reason why this is valuable beyond what it does for your shop. It's valuable because it helps you plan more effectively for the future.
Absolutely. It makes it so much easier, like when you can talk to your community and figure out what's going on or what people want to see, especially like even running events. Like, no, like if people are in the store, you can plan for future events better. And then that way you're running profitable events, or just know, hey, maybe we can close early on this night. You save labor because no one's out playing Magic. Or you can, hey, let's stay open later. We're doing sales, we're doing business, we're selling things. And, you turn hours that you were closed into hours you're open and making money.
And speaking of the future, we're just getting into 2023. Things have been interesting so far. The last few months have been a very interesting time for Magic, for the hobby industry in general. Where do you see the next, let's say 11 and a half or 11 months or so going into 2024? What do you see the next year looking like?
Hopefully, Magic continues to keep doing what it is, whether people agree with Wizards the way they print cards or not. I just want to see people enjoying the game. I want to see more successful tournaments. I want to see, the return to some big events. We have like all the Star City cons that are doing a great job. I know like the Midwest has NRG doing their tournament series. I'd like to see, just more big things get players excited. It gives another reason to come out and play Magic because like they're prepping for a big tournament, or I want to see, some more big tournaments in store. Just the community to do well. I don't think even if Wizards does something wrong, like I don't think the Magic community itself is going anywhere. People love the game, and I just want to see that continue to grow and people just have a good time.
Yeah, for sure. I think most people want to see, especially Magic. Most players want the game to succeed. It's more like they want it to succeed despite perhaps what the managers of the brand are doing, and it's been a very interesting time. And I know that Magic players are known for being negative, to put it nicely.
Yes,
even in the best of times, they've been known to be very negative about their favorite game. But recently, it's been more deserved than perhaps in the past. But I generally agree that I don't think it really, like, if Wizards decided that tomorrow, hey, we're going to stop printing this game, we're done, we're out of here, the game's done, we're finished, I don't think it would necessarily disappear in the way that other games have kind of died out. There's just too much momentum, too much history, too many players that are invested in the game and the game itself. Like, it still has older formats that will continue to be fun and engaging, and the secondary market, which I don't think would really be that impacted by a lack of new sets being printed on a regular basis. The game's not going anywhere.
Yeah, people playing 93, 94 haven't had a new card printed in 27 years, so I don't think they mind if whatever happens to it.
Exactly. Yeah, so positive thoughts. Everything's going to be great. Well, no, hopefully we're going to be going upwards and trending upwards anyways. I think that's a really good positive sentiment to kind of wrap things up on. The last thing I do want to end on before we tell everybody where they can go to get connected with you and find out more about, what 95 Game Center is all about. If they want to come visit, that'd be cool too. The last thing I do want to ask is, do you have any advice for someone who's listening and they are at the stage of their business where they are, they're thinking about, they're going to open a store. They're in the stores in the works. They're working on their business plan. Sometime in the next 12 months, this is going to happen for them. Or, they've just gotten things rolling. They're in that first year. They're trying to figure things out. What kind of advice would you give somebody who's listening right now as to how to help them through that process?
I think the big thing is if, an area with other game stores, you have to do research and maybe offer something they're not offering, figure out what would make your store better, or what would give them a reason to go to your store. If there's not one in the area, obviously you have to get a feeling for the community to see if there's a need for that. Those are the big things. I mean, just how, I said, we're a big play space. A lot of stores deleted play space, so now we offer play space. Other stores, if that's where you branch into the games. If there's, I think it's for the longest time, Force of Will was a big card game just in Florida. But that's because Cool Stuff Inc. is such a big store. They offered Force of Will and kept that game alive for a long time just off their own. They offered it to their community, and their community wanted it. So I think offering things that your community wants, or doing things better than the competition, don't need to do everything better. Obviously, there's a lot of crossover. You carry Magic, you carry board games, things like that. But having something that sets you apart and really like gives players a reason to be there. It gives people a reason to check you out. Like is the real key feature.
Yeah, I agree. That reminds me of Rob Gruber up in BC, Canada. He was known for which game was it? Bakugan, Kaijudo, one of those two, one of the
Yes.
two games. Kaijudo, that was it specifically. And he's a small store, like it's a small place, small population, and his success is far outsized because of force of personality and a lot of other reasons. But he was known, like Wizards came out to see what he was doing because he was so successful with this tiny community, with this tiny niche game, and he was getting like hundreds of people to show up for this game for these nights. And it's just, you can be known for something that's not Magic, that's not like one of the core products, and you can like really crush it if you go out there and you commit to doing it really well and you figure it out and you crack that nut. That can be something that completely changes the game for your business.
Definitely. And that's why like I think a lot of stores are like they don't want to break the mold of Magic and Pokemon. They don't want to check out new games. But like there's games worth checking out and there's communities for those games. I think people just need to take a chance on them sometimes, like to really diversify or offer something different to the communities.
Yeah, and as long as you don't do anything too reckless and don't dive in too deep for something that's going to completely crash and burn, you do a little bit of risk mitigation.
Research is good.
Do some research, talk to your people. Then you're not going to hopefully make any too big mistakes in the process. But I think that's a really great piece of advice to end things on. Where can people go to find out more about 95 Game Center, 95 MTG? Where can they connect with you guys to find out more?
We have 95mtg.com is our big online store, and then 95gamecenter.com is like the store to represent the LGS with all our events and scheduled like that. On Facebook, we're on Instagram, pretty much everywhere.
Cool. Well, if you want to find all the links for that stuff, we'll make sure that they're in the show notes. Thank you very much, Michael, for coming on the show, and I really appreciate the conversation. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. We will talk to everybody again in the next episode of the Manaverse Podcast.